Well, hello, mamas. Jessica Coulter here, CEO and founder of Ace Cookie Tutoring. Today, let's talk more about test prep. If you missed earlier's video from Monday is what I should have said. We talked about the types of tests, like which tests your college student will be taking this year. Today, I want to focus on the standardized tests versus the classroom tests, okay? Because there are going to be both that your teen is going to take this year, but the strategies that they need for both, for all the different types, actually are similar. You might be kind of surprised. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Before I really get going, I want to check in with you all, and I want to know, how does your teen feel when it comes to tests? You know, is your teen awesome at test taking? Does your teen hate tests? Is he scared of them? Like, I want to know, what's that word that you would use that you know your teen feels when it comes to tests? You know, I want to know what that word is. Let me know. And I also want to welcome you to my Facebook group. If you're not already a member, there's a link in the description for you to join us after the video. Alrighty. So you've told me how your teens feel about test taking, you know, what that word is. Well, now I want to give you some strategies that I teach students when I'm tutoring the ACT, and that I've also taught students who are preparing for tests in the classroom. And this can be chapter tests, unit tests, quizzes, little things like that. It can also be the bigger, scarier things like midterms and finals, okay? And then obviously there's like state testing and all sorts of other kind of like entrance exams and things. A lot of these strategies are good for every single type of test. Obviously, different tests like the ACT, SAT have timing requirements, you know, and that might not be a case in the classroom, but if there's a timing requirement for a test, well, your teen, your child, maybe even you someday, you know, you have to make that timing work. Your teen has to know, okay, I have this much time per passage, this time per section, maybe even per question. Okay, on the ACT, like I said, I focus on English and reading, and I gotta tell you, it's pretty simple for me after working with a student for a couple lessons, and I see, okay, we're constantly only answering questions in the first two passages in the time that I gave you, the amount of time that really works based on what I see for students I work with and the timing I suggest. And that's something we can talk more about if you'd like to shoot me a message or drop a comment down below. But do know, teens, if they spend too long, and like I said, this is not just for the ACT, but this is for any type of test that has a time element. If your child spends too much time per question, he's never going to get enough questions answered, let alone questions answered correctly to get that score, to get that grade that he actually wants to get on the test. So that's strategy number one, is making sure, knowing whether the test is timed or not, and then knowing, okay, how much time do I really have per passage, per section, per question, okay? And something I want to say about that, just as a little caveat, is that if your child knows it's a timed test, then I gotta encourage your child. And like I said, if this is you moms and dads, if you're doing some kind of like certification for work, if you go back to school, if you're like refreshing, like renewing your license, do know those analog watches are the way to go. Do not count on there being a timer, a clock of some kind in that classroom, in the building you're testing in, or your child's testing in, because there might be a clock there, but there's no guarantee you can see it. If you turn around, if your son or daughter turns around, that could be construed as cheating, so not a good idea. And digital watches in this day and age, do all the texting, they do all the phone calls, all that stuff, and they're not allowed in a lot of these buildings and a lot of these testing centers. Okay, so I think that's everything I want to say about timing. I also want to tell you that you don't have to answer the questions in the order that they're there. Okay, that's another important component of timing, let alone test taking, is even if there's 5 passages, say on the ACT English or ACT reading, I always forget if it's 5 or 4, but do you know your child does not have to go from start to finish. You don't have to go start to finish. And this is an electronic test. This is a paper test. Start with the stuff that you know. Have your teen start with the type of story he likes the best. Start with the passage that immediately draws your teen's attention, okay? Because the goal here is the most points for the best score, the best grade. How we get there is a really personal choice based on interest, based on abilities, okay? I want to stop and say thanks so much for watching here on my Facebook business page on Ace Cookie Tutoring. I know YouTube's giving me some more trouble, so if you are a YouTube subscriber, I encourage you to join my Ace Cookie Tutoring channel as well, because all of my videos do end up over there as well. I do some content specifically for YouTube as well that, you know, actually works. So thank you for being here. Make sure you're a follower, make sure you're a subscriber, so you always catch these live. And if nothing else, you catch the replays so we can connect that way. So, other strategies to give you when it comes to test taking and standardized versus classroom tests. Do know answer choice elimination is a thing, okay? And it's not a thing, it's like one of the things. No matter if we're talking a time test, no matter if we're talking a test where if it takes you 6 hours, if it takes your teen, 3 days at school, whatever, do know answer choice elimination, that is where it's at, okay? The goal is to figure out which questions or which answers are obviously wrong. As soon as you can start eliminating things, as soon as you can start narrowing down your selection, then that means your teen, immediately greater chance of answering the question correctly, okay? What else to tell you here? What other strategies to make sure you know are good for both types of tests, all types of tests? Well, I want you and I want your teen to think about your learning style, okay? For me, I'm a visual learner, so that means if I'm doing some math problems, I'm going to be drawing it out. I'm also kinesthetic, so that means I need to be marking up my test booklet, my answer sheet. I need to circle questions I want to go back to. I need to scratch things out. I need to underline things. I need to write notes to myself. That's how I learn. That's my learning style. So if you're visual, you better be drawing. If you're kinesthetic, you better be marking it up. Auditory, a little harder to do on a standardized test, even on a classroom test. But this might sound crazy to you, but think about this, mamas. If you have an auditory kiddo, do you know those like squeaky pens, those squeaky pencils? Those are going to drive your auditory student crazy. And if it doesn't, that's amazing, but most likely that's going to be annoying to everyone, let alone especially the auditory learners. So that's something to consider is a smooth writing pen. And then also, your teen obviously can't talk out loud, can't hear himself, but you can still read to yourself in your mind. You can still kind of hear yourself. So encourage your teen to read out loud without reading out loud, okay? So definitely much more to share about study strategies, let alone test-taking strategies. And if you want more, join my Facebook group. There's a link down below in the description. Click on that, answer a couple questions so you can join us in the group. When you join my Facebook group, Teaching Teens to Love Learning, you'll learn what those 11 study skills are that all teens need to know how to learn so they can love to learn, so they can actually study for that test and get a great grade, get a great score. So see you soon for another video all about test-taking strategies. Night, mamas.